live a happy, healthy, whole life, mind, body, and soul. Hey, you guys, it's Leslie, the founder of the Collective Compass, your resource for all your holistic health biohacks for the female, globally minded entrepreneur. Hey, everybody, welcome to the Connected Collective, sponsored by the Collective Compass and Loma Films. All the panelists, thank you for joining me today. Alexis Willis, Amanda Varnell, Marie Mont, Leandra Johnson. If you guys want to go ahead and unmute your screens, and thank you, Jessica Martinez, for managing the chat box for me. So if any of you guys want to get any more information about any of the panelists or get any more information about the Collective Compass movement, you can put that question in the chat, and then Jessica will help me get those questions answered for you guys. Any of the panelists, you guys can leave yourselves unmuted. We're just going to take turns basically going through the conversation. So just to get started, welcome everybody. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you so much to all the people that have tuned into the conversation, that have registered through the Collective Compass movement. There is so much need for more of these types of conversations, especially in the white community. And just to introduce our topic today, we are talking about the term white denialism. Oh, also, you guys, the camera's up there, just remind you. So I picked the term white denialism from an essay that I read by Professor Brittney Cooper. Marie, are you able to hear me? Leandra, Alexis, you guys able to hear everything okay? Yeah? All right, cool. So again, the term that we're discussing today is white denialism, and I wanted to use this term specifically. We've had some really interesting conversations this week leading up to this that has actually questioned me a lot about why am I using the term white denialism? Would we rather call it something else? No, we would not, because we are taking the terms that are being used beyond the white community, and we are discussing them, and we are absorbing them and being more receptive to them within the white community today. So our intention today is to bring anyone in the white community looking to be better receptive to all of the discussions that are going on in all of the ethnic communities around our country, especially. We wanted to dive into this term because it is what's being used around the country. And so that is what we're trying to do with this discussion today. So I'm going to do a quick introduction of all of the panelists. You guys, thank you so much for participating. You have been specifically invited because of your area of expertise and the work that you do within the community. I know you guys all have different perspectives, so everybody listening can get a little bit different of an interpretation of either somebody's understanding of the word or their experiences in reference to experiencing, watching, witnessing, living through white denialism. And so you guys are going to get to hear so many different perspectives on this share today. I hope that somebody will be able to click something for you or give you a little aha moment that will hopefully shift your own perspective and help you be more encouraged to do the self-awareness work so that you can continue to be a part of these conversations. And so to start it off, we've got Marie Mont, one of the most impactful activists in the Chattanooga area. Thank you so much, Marie, for joining this conversation with us today. I know you have had a lot going on in the community lately, and if you guys are not tuned into her, definitely check her out on Instagram. We have Leandra Johnson, who has helped me in so many ways just have a deeper perspective of what it means to even have this human experience that we have. She has so much experience in the field of psychology, and her life experiences, I guarantee you, are going to give you guys a really unique perspective on what the term will mean to her. We have Alexis Willis, who is incredible in the Chattanooga area in the startup community. She is everywhere in the Chamber of Commerce and in downtown Chattanooga. So if you guys have done anything with starting your own business or trying to get into the entrepreneurial scene in Chattanooga, then you definitely know who Alexis Willis is. We have Amanda Varnell, who is a culinary artist and a beautiful spirit in the Chattanooga community. And I want to thank her for joining us today. We have Zach, who is an incredible artist and activist in the Chattanooga area as well. We have Roland McClendon, who has his own podcast called The Deep Program Show. So he does this all day long, trying to work to deprogram everyone's mindset to help better connect the community. And we have Lil Mo Films, Maurice McDowell Jr. here to give us his experiences. He has so much experience in trying to create this conversation. He actually put an entire movie out last year trying to create the discussion around the fact that there are two sides of Chattanooga. And I know if it's happening in Chattanooga, then it's happening in your community as well. So you guys definitely need to check out all of his content related to trying to expand our conversations, trying to elevate our mindsets, and trying to be able to honestly connect to each other's differences. So we all love to agree to disagree, and we're here to discuss this topic with you guys more. So now I'm going to give you guys all the chance to go into your 3 minutes of just discussing these three things. So each panelist is going to get the chance to explain what white denialism means to them, what their experiences are in relationship to the term, and what they think needs to happen right now for us to be able to better elevate ourselves from this toxic pattern of generational trauma. So Alexis, do you want to go ahead and start off for us if you want to unmute yourself?
Hey, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm also driving. So I was talking to some friends about this session today, and my first time hearing about it was when Leslie asked me to be on this panel. And so what I have noticed over the last, I guess, like 18 months, or what has happened for me, is these new terms that even I'm learning. So I'm like looking forward to this conversation because I want to hear different perspectives. But here's what I explained to her, and I can only do it through example, was like, to me, it feels like white denialism is this idea of like, we're in this post-racial America, right? And that racism doesn't exist. And I'm like, maybe that's it. Maybe so. I'm gonna be a little all over the place. But she was like, I don't get it, because aren't we? And I was like, oh girl, first of all, tune in. And so just like, it is what it is. Like, I'm assuming that it's denying that any of what our experience is, our as in Black people's experience, is actually a real thing, which it feels like gaslighting to me. And I mean, that's kind of where I left it. Like, I don't know if I'm saying, I have joined this panel so that I can learn more about it. Leslie, I know you're like, Alexis knows all the things, but I don't know. I feel like I'm still learning a lot about
I love that you're saying that.
all things racial equity, and I'm constantly learning and reading books about it. This is a brand new term for even me. And I did have people ask me about it, and I was like, look, if it offends you, then you should probably learn more. So I thought that was interesting that you had people ask you to use a different term, because that's not going to move us forward at all if we just decide to use different words. Did that help?
Absolutely. And
Are y'all frozen? Am I frozen? Okay, I see some head nods. Leslie, y'all are going in and out for me, and it could be because I'm moving around.
It could be technical issues on both of our ends. My Wi-Fi is a little weak right now.
Yes, I hear a yes. Okay. I mean, I see a yes.
Can you hear me better now?
All right, hold on. Let me, I'm going to mute for a second while I work on my sound.
Okay, well, while you mute, I'm going to just give my response to that. And I love that you came right out into the conversation and said that you really aren't totally sure what the term even means to you as far as having the chance to process it, because there are so many new words that are being used by different authors and activists and writers, and people are all processing all of this in their own way. And so I will tell you right now, the fact that you said that is going to make anyone I know, especially within the white community, that they also don't know, they're going to feel so much more comfortable saying what they don't know, because we're all figuring this out together. So I think a lot of the pressure from the white community, from what I've experienced, is that we feel like we're supposed to already know, or we're embarrassed to participate in the conversation. And so that is absolutely not the case. That there is really, I mean, in being embarrassed is just something that is just a part of what we have to work through in our own self-awareness and perspective to be able to participate in the conversation. So I think that it's a great thing that you said that. Marie, do you want to go ahead and break it down for us, and what your experience and what your perspective on the word is, and how you've heard it used, and what it means to you?
Absolutely. First, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to be on a panel with such wonderful people. And I hope that I represent for the community very well. In my perspective, white denialism is historical. It is prevalent and present attitude, as well as represented and dominant leadership. And so when we think about white denialism, we're looking at a system that is prevalent just in the founding of this country. The fact that we have been denying certain people, especially African-American people, rights of being human, rights to vote, rights to exist, right to own property, right to be anything but somebody else's property. This denial of just the human existence of Black people and those who are indigenous, as well as those who are of minority groups, is America, right? And is historical. I think when we're talking about it in a present context, this resurgence of the scaling back of rights and opportunities for African-American people and other ethnicities of people, whether we're talking about what we're seeing play out all across the country with scaling back of voting rights and barriers being put up for people to be able to even go out and vote so they can have proper representation. When we think about what it looks like for people who are experiencing COVID and their access to testing and access to the vaccination. The fact that just because you live in a certain zip code that might be primarily African-American or Latino means that you're going to have less of an opportunity to get the same resources as your white counterparts. And then we talk about attitudes and leadership. We just had a article that came out in the paper about Chattanooga that over 86% of the boards in Chattanooga are white male-led. Over 90% of the boards in Chattanooga are white led overall. So even just in a leadership role, in being able to control the thoughts, the feelings, the emotions, the resources, the access of certain communities is not happening at the hands of minority individuals. And so when we think about white denialism, it's historical, it's attitudes, as well as just our white brothers and sisters being in the dominant roles of leadership, determining the outcomes for all kinds of minority communities.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Roland, do you want to go ahead and tell us your perspective on white denialism as well?
I got you. White denialism, for me, it goes twofold. If you look at the word supremacy, white denialism is first of all the denial of white supremacy. Meaning, okay, I don't even want to recognize it exists, so we don't want to deal with the problem in that. And also, if I deny, or whoever denies white supremacy, they don't want to really, they also deny white privilege. And if you look at it, we have a history of this country. We are even labeled 3/5 of a human being. When I say we, the quote unquote African Americans are labeled 3/5 of a human being in this country, and it's still on the books. If you don't believe me, check it out. And we just got to have a conversation to get past it, because if we don't have a conversation, we'll look over it like we've been looking over it for the whole term of this country.
That was well said. Thank you so much. Amanda, would you like to unmute yourself and say your thoughts on the term white denialism? Is it a new term for you? Let me unmute you on my end real quick. You may need to unmute your screen right here. There we go.
Sorry, I had to switch to my phone, the Wi-Fi in the house that I'm in, which is not my house, on my phone before, so I apologize for that.
It's all over.
I will say I echo, of course, everything that Marie said for sure. It's the denial of white. It's the denial of white supremacy. I mean, the denial that there is disparity in our country that feels at times insurmountable. That it is systemic. That it is current. That it is 100 years ago. So that's what white denialism is to me.
Zach, do you want to go ahead and share?
Yeah, sure. I mean, white denialism is, it's a lot of things. It's saying I'm not racist. It's professing that Christopher Columbus found America. It's, not doing anything to put yourself in a position where you can boost the voices of Black people around you and in your community. But my experience, like, I am one of those people who really learned about the Juneteenth holiday in this last, year and change since George Floyd's murder. And that's kind of been my experience. I was raised in a small town of 1,500 people, thinking that Christopher Columbus founded America and things like that. And, it's not always a conscious choice, but the choice of getting out of white denialism is always a conscious choice. You have to think for yourself. You have to do your own research. You have to not just speak words out of your mouth without knowing the history. I think that that's kind of sums it up for me.
Also, thanks. Leandra, do you want to go ahead and share? And let me get you unmuted real quick. I think that you might be cutting out a little bit.
White denialism for me is very simple. Like everyone has kind of touched on, it's a new term for me as well, and so I did reach out to kind of racism. And when things are subtle and it's not very overt, it's easy to deny, right? It's easy if you're not walking in somebody's shoes and you don't have that experience when you walk into a building, and you look like me, and the type of different reactions you may get just based off of first impressions, and you don't experience that on a daily basis, it's easy to deny that. And so I think it's kind of about trying harder, all of us trying to put ourselves in each other's shoes, whether it be if you're a white male from a small town and you've never had any friends or any interactions with people of color. I could see where you could get to that place where for you, those things don't exist. White supremacy doesn't exist because it's not a part of your everyday experience. So for me, that's just what it's about. Like if you're not experiencing those things every day, then it's easy to deny. And not for everybody, not only just for, the white community, even people in the Black community, I think, have a denialism about the type of systemic racism that's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And Mo, you want to go last but not least?
Yeah, one of the things that I've encountered in life with white denialism is understanding perspective and culture. It seems to me that I'm from the projects. Every now and then, no matter how many books I read or whatever I do, I act a little ghetto sometimes. I don't try to, but I do it. You know what I mean? So I have to put myself on the other side of the fence and say some of these people was raised around racists. They might not be racist. But their granddaddy might have been racist, or their great granddaddy might have been racist. So every now and then they do some racist stuff and don't realize they're being racist. You know what I mean? So my goal is to let hold that mirror up to people and let them see themselves. You know what I mean? And just understand that it's a different perspective out here, and we all gotta hold each other accountable in order to make this this world in this country a better place, you know, for everybody.
Thank you everybody so much for your answers. So I hope that'll give everyone listening a chance to maybe just think for themselves how they want to interpret the words. So now I'm going to just read a quick excerpt out of the essay that actually inspired the entire discussion panel. It's called, hopefully everyone attending has had a chance to read the essay, and I'm not going to ask any of the panelists to go into their thoughts unless they would like in this particular discussion, but I do want to read a little part so that everyone listening, if they have not read it, can understand why I chose the term and hopefully want to read the entire essay by Professor Brittney Cooper. The only thing that Juneteenth can and should mean to white people in 2021 is an opportunity to reckon with the 156-year history and very present threat of white denialism. A significant swath of white people simply refuse to acknowledge that they lost on November the 3rd and again on January the 5th. They have, in great defiance of the truth, decided that if they just don't concede, they can hold the nation hostage to their vision of a world of black and brown subjugation and white dominance. I am not speaking in metaphors here. The consequence of white denialism in the 19th century South was delayed freedom for enslaved black folks who simply were never told that they were legally free. Actual people endured extended suffering because white people would not tell the truth. The threat is the same today because the roots of the conflict are the same. And that hit me so strongly to put this entire discussion together, because if we do not accept the collective truth of everyone's experiences, then it's going to be really hard to get past that defensiveness and that feeling of being accused of right and wrong actions and just get to the healing phase. So I'm going to transition over to our open discussion part by talking about an interesting conversation that we had with these guys were able to come with me to the David Tula show, and it was interesting to me that he kept associating white denialism with guilt by calling it white guilt denial. So those of you who may have seen that interview, we told him a couple of times, thank you, David Tula, again for letting us come on your show. It was a really good opportunity to get the conversation started. And so I just want for us to have the opportunity for any of you guys to maybe explain why that word could maybe be associated with the term, and just kind of give us your thoughts on why, if you're thinking about white denialism, why it may not be appropriate to necessarily throw the word guilt in there, or if you think that it is appropriate. What are your thoughts on that?
I think both guilt and conviction were the two words that come up for me. And those are two, in any context, those are two very hard realities, right? It's like the guilt of having participated in one way or another by either by sheer ignorance or actual, like, through action. And then the conviction of that, right, is like, now you have this knowledge of what it is and what's been happening around you, and you didn't do any, or you feel either you feel powerless or you haven't done anything.
Thank you, Leslie, for putting this on today. I definitely had some racism in my family growing up. I can remember one time we watched Remember the Titans with my grandfather, and I thought he was going to have a nervous breakdown. Like it was uncomfortable, and we ended up turning it off. So I definitely saw, just the way that he thought about it. And I think I went through my adulthood just being completely unaware of systemic racism, individual racism, and all of these things. And then the George Floyd murder happened, and it was like I woke up, and I you know, followed Marie Mott and everyone that went out and marched through the streets. And I just became aware of, you know, how big of a problem it still is today. And I think there was some guilt for me because I just kept thinking, how could I have been so blind? How could I have been so ignorant? And I think I had to do some, I don't know if it's forgiveness necessarily, but just realizing that, you know, I didn't know what I didn't know. And I had to take away that guilt, because I get in a place, if I'm so guilty about something, I feel like, well, you know, there I go, it's over, but there's still so much left to be done. And when I remove that guilt and shame of staying for so long unaware, I am aware now, and I woke up. And so now is the time where there's still so much left to do. You know, we're fighting an uphill battle. And I think that there's been some positive and negative things that have happened over the last couple of years, but there's still so much to be done, and we can't stop. We can't stop. So.
Yeah, I like to chime in on that. I like to say, I feel like the first step to growing with this situation is understanding that you don't know, and that you don't understand, and that you just don't get it. You got to admit that. You know, most people like to feel like they educated and they know everything, but if you don't know, you don't know. So I commend you for admitting that you didn't know. And I think the guilt part comes in for younger white people, is because they didn't have a whip. They didn't whip nobody. They didn't chain nobody and put nobody on the boat and bring them over here. So their first response is, you know, don't take away my credit to what I have gotten to in life and say that I only got here because I'm white. You know what I mean? And you know, me as a man, I understand that. You know, you want your credit. You want your credit due for what you work for or whatever. But the fact of the matter is, it is an advantage. You do have an advantage. And part of that is acknowledging that you have an advantage. And there's nothing wrong with having an advantage, but don't act like you don't have an advantage. You know what I mean? So yeah, I commend you on acknowledging, you know, you said when you seen the George Floyd situation, and that stuff been going on for years, but it just finally got caught on, you know, this generation was able to see it on camera. But I can personally name 5 or 6 in-person situations where I've seen black men treated like that. You know, and it was, I don't want to say it was good to see it caught on camera, but it was good to see the reaction of some white people who didn't know that that's what really happens to us. That's why we crying. You know, that's why we like, man, it's hard out here for the black man. And when you in the white world, I have to speak a different language. I can't talk. Excuse my language. I can't talk that nigga talk at work. You feel me? I can't go in and say, man, what's up, dog? What's up, bro? I'm at the crib. I'm doing it. You know, that's my language. You know what I mean? But I can't do that at work. So I have to turn into a whole new person to where you know, white people are speaking they language. You know, they talking how they talk. You know what I mean? And you know, Mexican people got their own language. Arabs got their own language. You know, everybody got their own language. But if I speak the language I speak, I'm frowned upon, even though, you know, I have my own reason of what it means. You know what I mean? So it's just hard for me to walk out the house every day and have to put a mask on and transform into this whole other person and not be myself. You know what I mean?
If I could jump in, one of the things that I've heard in response to white people saying like, well, I didn't enslave anybody, you know, is, well, until the ancestors of the people who were enslaved no longer have to live under the oppression of my ancestors, my work is not done as a white individual in America. You know, you have to keep going until that bridge is divided, you know. But yeah, that was all I wanted to say.
One thing you said at David Tulis yesterday that would be great for me to mention right now is also that he said that the acknowledgement has to be converted to action. And that was so powerful for me. Thank you for coming and for thinking to say that, because I think that it's one thing for the white community to hear someone else from another ethnicity say that, but it's even more powerful, especially for me, to hear other people in the white community say those things, because I just hope that everyone can be less defensive, less triggered by it, and just be more willing to be receptive. And back to what Mo was saying with us forcing other ethnic communities to change their language to, in order for us to be receptive of what you're saying, you have to change your language. It just genuinely creates an intense barrier. So that's why I wanted to, again, just pick the term that other communities are using. It's so powerful for us to be willing to be receptive to everyone else's language. So thank you guys for sharing that.
One of the reasons why I mentioned having an open discussion is, okay, understanding where Mo is coming from. If you white, you want to understand his perspective. But if you black, you also want to understand the perspective of the white person, because, okay, I might be here, so I have to understand where you are. And we can't do that with just attacking the situation. I got to understand your background. You got to understand my background, because it's a reason the way you are the way you are. It's a reason the way I am the way I am. The way I talk is a certain reason because of how I was raised and my thinking process. The way you are is because how you was raised in your thinking process. And until we had a conversation, we'll just be bickering at each other. And we got to have understanding first, or we'll just keep going around the bushes.
Yeah, it's all a relationship, you know, black and white, it's a relationship, you know. I don't know.
I really think almost as dangerous or more dangerous.
No, you're fine, go ahead.
You're good, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, to me, as dangerous as white denialism, which we know white deniers, when they're out there saying, I don't believe this is true, we don't need to teach critical race theory, all this stuff, we know who those people are. I think what's dangerous, and because I was this for the first 40 years of my life, is white oblivion. We're just oblivious. We're living lives. We're doing things, you know, I've always had a smattering of people in my life that weren't the same color as me, but I just was doing my thing, and I was just freaking oblivious until I had the sister of one of my friends pointed out something I shared on my Facebook about something exciting that I thought was happening in Chattanooga. And she called me up and she said, can you tell me what's wrong with this video? This was 12 years ago. And I said, I watched it and I was looking for something overt. Wrong with it. And I finally, I'm like, Linda, I'm gonna have to hang up. 10 minutes later, I'm like, and I had that sick to my stomach, like report card day feeling. Like I knew something was wrong, but I couldn't see it. And she said, honey, it's not what's in it. It's what's not in it. This is a commercial for our city and there's no people of color in it. That was huge for me. And that though was the first day that I moved from being oblivious to being aware of privilege. Then I think though, what is dangerous as well, and I experienced that even though I kind of considered myself kind of woke, was last year with George Floyd. And all of a sudden I was putting, again, unintentionally, but the onus on my Black friends to help me understand things instead of doing the work and educating myself. And so, and my friend James McKissick said it best, it's like the day that white people discovered racism. Because I do think there's a lot of us that live in oblivion, that once we really are made aware of our privilege, we do have to work through that guilt. There is guilt there, but recognizing that's not serving us, what we really need to do is figure out, how do we do the work? How do we help people who are still in that oblivion camp to become less oblivious? How do we begin to confront white deniers? How do we continue to educate ourselves about all of these things that have happened that we weren't taught about in school? You know, so that's my 2 cents.
Absolutely. And the urgency is is there, especially considering after January the 6th. I mean, even the country, it is pretty much the erasure of the truth of what's happening within our country. Because we know for certain no Black Lives Matter protesters could have ever gone to the state, the capital of the country and broke into the rotunda and made it out alive, okay? Made it out alive. So I think I would have to say the very first thing, and I thank Kelsey for saying this, is that we've got to get outside of our element. How many white people go get a sandwich, a chow weenie plate at Mimo's? How's in the city, in the hood, in East Chat, my hood, I'm just saying. When's the last time you just crossed over that, even just with enjoying some of our food, which gives you an opportunity to talk to Black business owners, to see Black people in the neighborhood, right? To drive through a community that you think you know something about and actually see Black children in it that are happy. So crossing over, one of the things that happened as a byproduct of the protest was people were forced, because of COVID and because of all the videos that were coming out. It wasn't just George Floyd. We had Elijah McClain. We had Rashard Brooks. We had so many African-American people beyond George Floyd who were murdered last year. The fact that it was just in our face. And we really need that, because we can't continue to lie to one another about what has happened. And part of the guilt is because what has happened. I think any person that beats on their spouse when it's brought to their attention, they're probably going to feel guilt and shame because you know what you've done subconsciously, right? But guilt doesn't serve us any purpose. It's what do we do after I go within myself and understand, even though I have not owned a slave, never whipped a person, I didn't strip that person of their voting rights, but there's some people in my community who are doing some things like that. And I need to be doing something about it, even just starting with conversations at the dinner table, sewing circles, right? After work, beer drinking, and just talking about, I talked to my homie Mo, and he was telling me his perspective about something. I wanted to share that with you. It might seem like a lot of work, but it's so easy. It's just so easy. So what I would just say is for everyone to be encouraged out there that we don't want you to be stuck in guilt and shame. Part of acknowledging our history is it is what it is. And I think we need to take the emotion out of it. This country was founded on the murdering of indigenous peoples and the enslavement of another, right? And even the fact that white folk, right, called indentured servants, came to America, and 96% of them didn't even survive the first year in America because you were property too. So I think we need to be very, very careful if we don't do this work. It's not just going to be Black people who are impacted, but there's an opportunity for us to do this work. And it starts with just doing more of this, talking one to another, listening, learning, and sharing our perspective.
Yeah, and on the note of spouses, that's kind of what I was saying before, is like, it's a relationship, right? Black folks and white folks, it's a relationship. And in your own relationship, if, you walk into the kitchen and your partner says, hey, in the future, could you make sure to empty out the sink drain after you do the dishes? And you go, I didn't do that. Where is that going to wind up? That's going to wind up in an argument and, a fight. Whereas if you go, oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I will change that behavior in the future. I understand you. I hear you. You're right. That was wrong. I was inconsiderate, and you move forward. You're in a much better place to actually have forward movement and make a change, so.
Leandra, did you think you might have unmuted yourself? Did you have something you wanted to add?
I want to throw this out there because this came up a lot in my inner circle, and there's a lot of back and forth going on over the last few years. It's not enough right now, with everything going on, to say that I'm not a racist, but to be anti-racism, to put in the work to make sure that you are not going to accept injustices, not just to say, you know, I'm not doing that. I'm not a racist. Look, I have this, I have that. But to make sure that, you know, you don't allow it to exist in your space.
I want to chime in right quick. I love what Marie and Lee said. That we definitely, I think there was a waking up last year, and we can look at the video of George Floyd and see an act of violence. We also need to look at what Amy Cooper did in the park as an act of violence and recognize how those acts of violence show up in our workplaces, in our classrooms, and in our hospitals all the time. And they're a little bit more covert than having a video of someone with their knee on someone else's neck or beating them down or shooting them. But it's still violent. It still messes with the livelihood of Black people. Imagine Amy Cooper, I believe she was a trainer or something at the company she worked with. Imagine how her biases impacted someone's opportunity to economically empower their family. What she did in the park, she was also doing when she clocked in. And so that's when I say, like, start where you are. Like, I can almost guarantee that any white person on this call has seen a similar act of violence in their workplace. And my call to action to you is to speak up. It doesn't have to be where you're in a big group setting, but approach that employee, you know, after work, you know, like there's happy hour, but you know, there's events. Even if you if you have an after work event and you notice who's not there, again, like Amanda said in the video, if your Black coworkers aren't showing up to that, there's a reason for that.
I apologize, you guys, we keep cutting out. I guess we're all having a little bit of an internet issue today.
I'm still here. I don't know if y'all are hearing me, but I talked and I'm finished. But y'all cut in and out for me.
I will piggyback off of Alexis if y'all can hear me. Can y'all hear me?
We can hear you now. Yeah.
I will piggyback off of Alexis, and I will say, I do feel like a lot of white people not racist, but they do receive the benefits of what racism gave to them. You know what I mean? And just because you didn't do the racism, but you do receive the benefits, like Alexis said, if you see something happening or if you see something going on, you know, if you don't stand up for it, and if you know it's wrong, then you just as much as a part of the problem as someone who is overtly being racist. You know what I mean? A lot of times I feel like people will turn a blind eye to it and act like they just don't see it. You know what I mean? And but the people who experiencing it, they really have to go into the world. You know, I really have to wake up as a Black man in this world. I have to go to the gas station, and when I get to the front register, the gas station man look at me and say, "Oh, you need a pack of cigarettes?" No, I don't even smoke cigarettes, but he just judged me because he think all Black people smoke cigarettes. I go to my gas pump and I put $20 in my gas tank. There's some white lady looking at me like I'm broke because she can fill her gas tank up, but I only can put $20 in my gas tank. I have to go to work. I have to change my language up. I have to worry about if the police gonna pull me over. I have to worry about Black women not treating me with respect because I don't have a certain amount of money or something. It's a whole lot of things I have to go through. And then you turn the news on, you see he shot him because he stepped on his shoe. and in your mind, you just like, he just shot him because somebody stepped on his shoe? No, it just been a whole lot of stuff accumulating. And that was the tipping point. That was the boiling point that made that man snap. You know what I mean? Like it's only so much you can deal with on the everyday basis. And my last point I will make, it's sad that we are still going by the same rules that was made on the $2 bill. When you look at the $2 bill, you see all them white men on that $2 bill signing the rules. You know, the Declaration of Independence, the rules that we still go by today in America. And there was no women in that on that picture. Wasn't no white women on that picture. Wasn't no black women, no black men. It was all white men on that picture. So if you can't understand that right there and see who the rules are made for, you know what I mean, then and see what we dealing with, you know, then that's you know, you just being blind to the fact, you know. So you just gotta open up your eyes and see what's really going on out here.
To touch bases off what Mo said, being a black man, a lot of times being focused, you get looked at as you angry. Once you're dealing with all these things coming at you, you have to have a look of determination. Not that you mad, you just focus on everything going on around you. You got this you dealing with, you got that you dealing with, and everything. For one, if you talk hood, they gonna label you as, oh, he hood or he ignorant. If you talk with proper English, you get looked at from certain people, oh, you think you better. When he should have the right to speak the way he want to, I should have the right to speak the way I want to. Yes, we come from the same places, but our mind's different. And sometimes it's best to understand that you ain't gonna understand everything about a person. If you want to get to know them, have a conversation and build a relationship without judging, because I can look at you and gauge your perception, and that would be totally wrong until I get to know you. And that's really what's happening in a lot of cases. And when you throw out a word like denialism, instead of dealing with it, and then you associate guilt or whatever, let's have a conversation. And not only having a conversation, we got to plan and act on it, because we've been having a conversation for hundreds of years, but there's no action behind it. We all know what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so much out there right now that we can all use as resources within the white community to educate ourselves. We have so many authors. Brené Brown is one who actually has a PhD on studying shame. So just to throw her out there as an excellent resource, I mean, if it's natural for guilt and shame to come up to the surface while we're dealing with these toxic generational patterns, then we need to be finding resources for ourselves to be able to learn how to process those emotions in a way that is going to encourage us to do the deeper inner work, as opposed to getting flooded and overwhelmed and ignoring it. Because every time we ignore the need to do our inner work, we are putting that responsibility on somebody else to hold that space. So we all need to learn the tools within the white community to be able to figure out how to hold space for all of this, instead of putting all of that onto somebody else to hold for us.
Yeah, I just want to say real quick too, I think a lot of people, when they are confronted with their white privilege, try and state their class as evidence that they are not privileged, and those are different things. You know, a black person and a white person in the same class can be profiled in a classist way, but that black person is still going to have to deal with a whole nother set of contextual issues that white person will not have to deal with. And so the access that you had to finances or whatever as a child is not your privilege. You know, your privilege is in how you're treated when you go out, how you are spoken to, etc. If you're followed around a drugstore when you're looking for first aid stuff versus not, etc. You know, and shame and guilt are also different, right? And so when we're talking about guilt, you know, guilt is something that you can make up for. If you say, oh, you're right, I'm guilty of that, let me go and, you know, change my behavior and fix that, you know, that is something that's within your capacity, whereas shame is something that you feel like you cannot overcome in any way. You know, it's something that there's no way for you to change that course of action. And so I feel shame about the violence that I contributed to in my youth toward people of color, etc. You know, but in terms of guilt, you know, that is something that I can now make good on and change my behavior and go out and do the work, you know, and those are just different things, you know. And as somebody who, you know, I came from a small town of 1,500 people. There's no gas station in my town. There's no red light. There's a stop sign. We have a pizza place and we have a post office. But, you know, my father saw me being raised in that space, and he made every effort to bring me out of that, you know. And so at 15, I reenacted the voting rights march. I walked all the way from Selma to Montgomery. I walked with the man who held Martin Luther King's attaché, Reverend Douglas Reese. And even that, as a young adult, was not able to fully open my perspective. You know, I walked with KKK bomb threats in front of me, and that did not change my understanding of that privilege that I had. You know, it is a difficult road as a white person, but it is necessary, because the difficulty of not doing that, as hard as it may seem, is much easier than the difficulty of dealing with the shame of treating the people around you with violence for the rest of your life because you were too lazy to do the work.
Amanda, were you gonna, oh, I'm sorry, Marie, go ahead. And then when you're done, I'll let Amanda, if you want to chime in.
Amanda was before me. No. I just want to say that for my white counterparts, you have nothing to lose. There's nothing that I know it is weaponized against you to discourage you from doing this work, that, you know, you're going to lose your rights. You're going to lose this. You're going to lose your housing and your jobs and everything in between. But you have nothing to lose except what has consistently come up on this call is relationship, right? The ability for us to exist amongst one another with shared resources and access in peace. That's all Black people are asking for. We don't want to rule over you. We just want to be able to take care of our own communities. I don't want to have to tell you what to do. I just don't want you stepping on me. You know what I'm saying? We all pay taxes. I just want to see my taxes go back to my community. I'm not asking for you to give up in anything. I'm just asking for you to share. Okay, I'm asking for you to share, and sharing more than an opportunity to share resources, share in our history, because we have a shared history, right? And it's not all bad. If we actually start digging, you might uncover that there have been white people all throughout history that have aided and abetted in the freeing of African-American people and certain indigenous folks. So I want people to really feel a heart. Martin Luther King Jr. said, Dixie's heart is fluttering and she needs a shockwave. The heart of America, I just saw a publication that came out this week that stated that the relation between white and Black people as far as the matter of race and its outcomes is at the lowest that it's ever been in history since the Civil War. So we have nowhere to go but up from here, family. And that is just, I put a link to resources because I'm all about empowerment and education, but just click that link. It is a repository of information to just start from ground zero, which is just consciousness. What are just the foundational basics of the things that I need to learn to be able to start on this lifelong journey? You're not going to get it, and you're going to fuck up. Can I say that? You're going to make mistakes, right? You're going to falter. You're going to be placed in a situation where it's bubbling inside of you for you to say something, but you just don't have the courage yet. Don't give up right there. Sometimes that's where it starts, is you didn't used to even think about it at all. Just understand that you're making progress. If you just start feeling something, right? But eventually let that bubble up out of your mouth as, you know, this ain't right. You ain't got to say a whole lot. This ain't right. What's happening here? I see it. I'm reporting it. And this not right. So just click the link. Please share those links, share resources. We're not asking you to be gurus, race gurus, or anything like that. We're just asking you to take a step, and after you take one step, take another one.
And I think it's always in sharing your own experience with people. I mean, like, that's what I try right now, not to be shy with my white friends, is really what my experience has been. So what I was going to say a few minutes ago was really about my personal relationship. I've been in a relationship with a Black man now for 7 years. And as our journey progressed as couples, even things that I thought were foundational, right? Like how to argue and how to apologize. It's understanding that even his perspective and his expectations as a Black man are so different from mine as a white woman. And you would think, oh no, it's all the same. No, I remember distinctly a conversation when I'm like, can't you just say, I'm sorry? Like, I want to say I'm sorry to you. Like, don't you expect me, if I do this, to say I'm sorry? And he was like, I stopped expecting apologies a long, long time ago, like out of life in general. Right. And to me, that was just like, what, I mean, like, it was like, it rocked me for, I mean, that was a conversation we had a good 2.5, 3 years ago. And I still think about it all the time, that our where we come from and the experiences that we've had our entire lives, just little tiny, just cuts and cuts and cuts that we've had of disrespect that I haven't had to experience. But my partner is the Black expectation he has absolutely every day. Moving through the world is just a different experience, like a different expectation that I have of the way outcomes of situations will go. And so I think coming to conversations, understanding that things that seem like no-brainers and just kind of duh to me, that in of itself is that white privilege and that white oblivion, which I'm like is so dangerous, is because I was just so oblivious to even that, you know. And so it comes from being able to have vulnerable conversations with the people you love, your friends, and two, I mean, if you don't have friends that don't look like you, then you need to start to do the work to get to make that happen. Because there are people that want to have relationships with people of other colors, and you just have to start saying, hey, like, could we be friends? Can we start that journey? So, and I'm very grateful for several women that I have in my life now that weren't in my life several years ago on an intimate level, that are in my life in that way now. And it's because, you know, we decided to do this together, and I'm so grateful for them. Alexis Willis, looking at you.
I really like.
I'm so glad.
I really like the term white oblivion, but for those looking to do more research, unconscious bias may come up with a little bit more work for you to do.
So I guess just to be respectful of everyone's time, I'm going to go ahead and just let us conclude with me saying thank you so much to all of the panelists that have contributed your thoughts and words and experiences to this conversation. And thanks to everyone attending. I really want to encourage everyone attending to continue to do their inner work daily. There are so many resources that you can access through, especially the Collective Compass movement. Our entire mantra that makes it a movement is because the healing of the collective starts with the healing of the individual. And so if you want to facilitate the healing of the collective and be a positive force for good, then you have to do your own self-awareness work, and that looks different for everyone. So for anyone in the white community, you have a lot of generational patterns that may be toxic that you will want to unpack, and you're going to want to do the perspective work necessary to be able to gain the skills to not only connect to what somebody else is saying that's had a different experience than you, but also make them feel appreciated for sharing that with you, because it's several steps in the process. So not only do you want to hear that person, you want to make them know that you hear them and give them feedback that lets them know that you appreciate everything that they're sharing with you, because it's a vulnerable experience to share any of your experiences with another human being. So thank you again for listening. We're going to have the panelists give, if anyone wants to give, yes, definitely follow Bilmo Films on YouTube and go check out the Deprogram show with Roland McClendon. Follow Marie Mont wherever you are able to follow her right now. I know on Instagram she has incredible couple of like series of videos that are so empowering for you to do your inner work. Thank you, Monty Brule, for all your work in the community, and Lisa and Erica Landry for listening. Marquetta, I love you so much. Thank you so much for our conversations. Thank you, James, for tuning in. Thank you, Jessica, for helping me manage the chat. If any of you guys want to share links to anything that you have to offer the community, go ahead and put that in the chat box, and I'm also going to post that in the comments whenever this entire video is posted to the Collective Compass Movement on YouTube. So if any of you guys want to share any final thoughts, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. All right, well, thank you guys again for participating. Amanda, did you want to share something?
Only that hopefully this is just the beginning of many conversations much like this. And then from a conversation like this, then has to come action steps. What community groups are you going to continue to get involved with? Where are you going to, who are your local politicians that you're going to support? How are you going to start this? And then the ripple effects just have to spread and spread and spread and spread. So a lot of work to be done. We have to do it. There is a certain sense of urgency building like never before. We have to get involved.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. And I'm going to let you guys go, and definitely tune into the collectivecompassmovement.com so everyone can rewatch this and share with anybody that missed it. Thank you guys again, and I'll see you guys soon.
Hey you guys, it's Leslie, the founder of the Collective Compass, your resource for all your holistic health biohacks for the female, globally minded entrepreneur. I know there are some things that you're doing that are still keeping you in self-sabotage, and you may not even know it. And there may be people around you who are not on the same path that you're on, and they may be giving you some negative energy. Through the next series of videos related to all the ways you're trying to better yourself, will really break down some of those limiting beliefs that maybe you have inside your head or that you hear in your external environment. And I'm going to show you how to process those in a way where you can have a different perspective that's actually going to help you change that negative thought into something positive, and then it will no longer be a source of your self-sabotage or a negative trigger that you may encounter externally. What we teach you how to do at the Collective Compass when you rewire your perspective and practice habits that really support that type of lifestyle that's going to connect you to your inner guidance system, and it's going to allow you to live happy, healthy, whole.